thanks everyone for joining, and especially to new people, and especially also to the people who've been missing from the movement for some time and maybe have returned, because we've been through a lot through the past few years. It's a pretty unprecedented kind of context for a social movement to try and sort of emerge, become strong, and then go through a global pandemic such that we have. So I'm often kind of referring to Extinction Rebellion as a kind of miracle in existence, as it still is here. I'm just going to set the context. I'll try and be super quick, and I don't think a lot of this will be surprising to you, but I hope it'll offer a useful kind of frame for us to think about the work that we're moving into. So we all probably know very well, if we're here, that when it comes to the climate and ecological crises, we're failing, we're losing the battle. And one of the important things I think to think about is that if we were doing anything significant about this, we probably would have noticed. Well, why? Because the economy is literally made of carbon. And so when we make the changes, we're going to feel the changes. We're going to know that we're making changes that are big to all of our lives and the way that we organize society. And that's precisely why we all need to be heavily invested in them as an entire community, society, nation, and a community of nations worldwide. And so an enormous transformation and adaptation effort that's needed is really clear. It's not just mitigation, it's not just adaptation, it's both at once, because we're so late in the day now. Our rivers are running dry across Europe, London is on fire, houses are being burnt down, temperatures that were expected in 30 years' time are hitting us right now, and people are saying again and again, it's worse than we thought, it's faster than we expected, it's happening now, and we know that it's going to get worse. We also know that nowhere is unaffected, that nobody can escape living with the tragic impacts that are resulting from our failure to succeed in tackling this or preventing any of this. And so it's important for us to look at where decisions are made. And today, I think we all probably would agree that British politics is not in great shape. In my opinion, it is so corrupted, so owned by corporatism and money. It feels very much like the rich elites have waged a war against the masses, including and especially via the media. Our media works for corporatism. It appears to celebrate ignorance. It wants to see the eventual collapse of civilization, apparently, due to its spiraling inequality. And it doesn't help us to imagine anything else. And I don't think that it will. So this is when we have to admit that we are dealing with an elite class who appear to have support because of their attachment to the media, their involvement with PR and their ties to tax dodging billionaires. But the politicians are refusing to act when their own people, the world family, and particularly the people around the world to whom we owe so much, are desperate to see the changes that are necessary. So we must not be mistaken, because climate action would be a massive vote winner. So I'm going to bring in some stats, okay? 8 out of 10 people in the UK are very worried about climate change. 52% of people in this country think that we should bring emissions to net zero before 2050. So 52% of the public agree with Extinction Rebellion. That's very important. Overall, 84% are concerned about climate change, more than half are very concerned. So the politicians today are ignoring a clear mandate that they have to act. Everybody wants to see real action. Everybody wants to live. They want their children and their grandchildren to live. The people who do not want this course of action are their corporate sponsors, their collaborators, a tiny minority, basically, of privileged and I would say deluded people. So this is what you might term an enormous derangement. And somebody said to me recently, you know, the film Don't Look Up is so distressing because the essence of it is one of a madness, of a society that is unhinged from reality, living in a fantasy and meeting its end because those in power simply felt so almighty, so cunning, so superior that they were answering the needs of an idea which simply didn't exist in the material world. So I find myself, as many of us probably do, asking, why do we fly empty planes during a climate emergency for, you know, airline companies to keep a place on their schedule through a pandemic? Why are we building homes on floodplains with unsuitable specifications for a future that's already here, quite frankly? Why are we wasting so much food while people go hungry? Why do so many allow so few people to dominate and subjugate us? And are the people with the hands on the levers of power today so detached from reality, so stupid, so incapable of facing reality, that they would rather kill their own children and the next generation to keep the status that they've gained so far? And if that really was true, then asking ourselves how to act as if that truth is correct. So I think every person alive today has the choice whether or not to act in good faith. There is this knowledge which is widely held by us all about the fact that we are headed for collapse. We're living through what is termed a mass extinction event. It's happening right now. Heat and sea levels, destabilized weather. Democracy is plunging us into a preventable mass death outcome worldwide. And so what democracy decides to collapse civilization on purpose? What democracy decides to destroy the rest of the planet? What democracy decides that it doesn't want international security or stability? We know that that's where this is going to destabilize international relations. And what democracy is going to opt for the breakdown of our food supply when we have these warnings? And the answer is this one. It's the one that we live in. Now, it's been said, citizens are the conscience keepers of any democracy. And I like that reminder very much, that we can accept some responsibility for this. This is our situation and we believe this is our democracy. So how much of this are we really prepared to take responsibility for? I think the most overlooked aspect of Extinction Rebellion is our third demand, which has always been for more democracy, recognizing that we're in a position where if we don't demand more, we are certainly going to get less. And we all probably would agree that our political system is wildly out of date, full of the same tired old people. It's an abject lack of imagination. And if you've been paying attention to the space that we've been talking about for participatory democracy, you'll say, well, the Citizens' Assembly happened in the UK, and, you know, in France, citizens took their job on and they ran their Citizens' Assembly there, but it hasn't resulted in the outcomes that you might expect. But what's important to note here is that the ordinary people who took part in those things took their job extremely seriously. It's like jury duty. So compare good citizens being called to provide a very, very serious public service, which affects people's lives, and then compare that with the cesspit of public life following the degradation of the administration of Boris Johnson. So how have we allowed that to be the legacy so far of the 2020s? And why have we allowed these kind of emergent processes, particularly the one in Britain, to remain in the shadows? Because the Citizens' Assembly that happened in this country was not on the front pages. It wasn't on the news. The whole country wasn't saying how wonderful citizens are now getting a say in the future. That's important. So this is a call for transparency, and dare I say it, it's about honesty in politics. That might sound like a ludicrous suggestion that it's a possibility, but that's what we need, right? So in our culture, where we think it's normal to maybe plunder the world, kill people through wars, that it's okay to leave the fossil fuel industry and the executives holding humanity by the throat, we need to recognize that we are living in these real-time irreversible changes. There is a sense of urgency, and we know that what we fail to prevent now can't be repaired. So arguably, this is a turning point for humanity, and the good guys are losing, I think, because there aren't enough of us working together yet. And it has also been said, this is a quote from historian Timothy Snyder, an obedient population teaches power what it can do. So this is telling us a passive approach to democracy is really saying it's fine to decimate the world and leave the next generation and all future generations to struggle in the wreckage. It's fine, so long as we allow that to pass. So Extinction Rebellion has always been there to say, that's not okay. We're mad as hell about that. We're determined to be led by our hearts in our work. We will choose non-violence. We will work with community, and we will choose to create a future that's focused on care and on freedom. Because if we're serious about making sure there's a future for humanity, we do need to pull together and prove to each other that we will not stand for what is taking place now. So our call, I guess, is to commit to making your primary work resisting the destruction of life on Earth. We need to work with empathy in our hearts, recognizing that we are operating in a society that's obsessed with power and money but we need to reorientate ourselves around kindness and care. And I would say this is also a point of reckoning for the UK, because the government that we have today will only legislate against protest, against the unions, against industrial action, against the rights of British people to see themselves in political life. And basically that means against the idea itself of democracy, meaning self-determination. So why do we allow energy companies to rip us off? And I would say that is because British corruption hides in plain sight. We do it very, very well in this country. So changing the course of our future and claiming our space in determining the response that we want to make is to make sure that it's inclusive and to be unifying. And this is our work now, to both reclaim our humanity and empower one another. We are committed to disciplined nonviolence. We will pull together to make sure the message is loud and clear, but we demand that our dusty and outdated political system feels the heat this autumn. And the people who come after me are going to explain a bit more about how we're going to do that, because our common interests are enormous, and a crisis response to this situation has to be an inclusive one. So politics may look pretty gross right now, but we all love democracy. And so we need to pull together, and we will stay strong, and I'll see you on the streets.